It is time for the newsroom, and Patrick Gadara and Joe Ageyo are with me in studio for today's edition. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be seen.
Where did you take
Good morning.
Clay today?
I know Clay, and he's excused himself. But he said he sent his love.
Oh.
Yes.
And
said he knew Gadara would clearly bash the media, but you're here, so you will hold. But you know, I think the past week
I've told him that he's also part of the media, so he needs to make up his mind.
where he belongs, right? You are on a tweef, that's what they call them, when you engage on fighting war of words on Twitter with several organizations all about Ebola. Asking the hard questions because Kenya had it been listed as high risk,
right? And
you were saying it's not high risk.
Well,
they actually had to change that status.
Yeah. Well, the fact is the WHO had put out a statement initially classifying Kenya as I think level 2 risk, which is pretty high. I think the highest is level 3. A risk for Ebola because of the number of flights that were coming in, and that was clear in their statement. And then they put out another, questions on Twitter. They were putting out tweets saying, well, actually, flights are low risk. So how is it that we've got low risk flights, but the fact that flights are coming makes us high risk? And we kept asking this question. It wasn't just me, it was a number of people. And eventually the WHO put out a tweet saying, actually, it's inaccurate to say Kenya is high risk. Which then became weird because the very next day, the government decided, no, actually, we are high risk, and let's stop all flights. So I think part of the reason that we are having all this, people are sort of tense, and it's sort of the beginnings of, I wouldn't say exactly a panic, but obviously a situation where people are unsure. Is this lack of clarity in what we are being told, in our preparedness, in government articulating. The National Disaster Committee says that there is a plan for infectious diseases, a protocol that government has, never published it. Where is it? What does it actually say? And then when we have reports that you have today in the Standard, the talk of the unpreparedness that we have, that 75% of all our medical facilities are unprepared to handle that. It's there. It says 6,000 out of 7,995.
But which brings where I start with him is, Joe, are we asking these questions? Are we just being, when we're told this by the government, we reported, are we really questioning them in as far as really then why is it high risk? Because it's not an airborne disease, this Ebola. You're not going to breathe, I know you were in America and in that hospital where that guy, that doctor was taken.
What are you suggesting?
We're just, being...
Although I was never screened, though, which was very interesting.
You see, we could have been a threat right on KTN. Yeah, but are we asking the hard questions on this one?
No, I think there's a lot of panic that has been there in the country, and I think everybody gets hysterical when it comes to things like infectious diseases and Ebola. Because it doesn't have a cure, so everybody loses their head. Because I was speaking to some friends of mine in government, and it seems to me that even the decision to suspend those flights was really not based on an objective assessment of what is really going on, but it was more because there's pressure in the country, like do something. That the government wanted to appear like they're actually doing something, because there are many contradictions about it, and I'll be the first one to say that I think that there are too many mixed messages. I don't even think that even us in the media are figuring it out fast enough to tell people what exactly they need to know, because maybe we don't even know what is going on based on all the different communications. And this is a journalistic reality normally when it comes to issues of science, medicine, all of these things. Because if WHO wakes up one day and says, oh, high risk, then the following days, actually flights are not that much of a risk. And so and personally, I believe that there ought to be more journalists who actually understand the technical issues, because it's very easy to get lost in all the medical jargon and explanations. But yeah, I don't think that we have done the best of jobs in terms of breaking it down to help.
I'll go. I mean, I think yes, you do need more, let's say, subject matter experts to explain the details of it. But when it comes to things like policy, a lot of things that the media can actually look at. The first cases of Ebola, I mean, it's now been with us for about 4 or 5 months, you know, since the first cases were found in Guinea. We've had time to actually ask, what if it comes here? You know, remember the last time, was it last week when we were saying, I mean, what happens if somebody comes in through who's not showing symptoms? You know, this thing has can incubate for up to 3 weeks. You know, and that to me is the nightmare scenario. Is the guy who actually walks across an airport and he is fine. He is screened and things, and he walks across and then gets sick somewhere else. You know, so now we are talking of quarantines, which is actually probably a good thing. You know, guys come in, they'll probably be kept there for like 3 weeks. Places like, I mean, in West Africa, West African countries, at least Ivory Coast, have been doing this now for a while. You know, why did it take us so long? You know, and going back to the actual decision that was made, you know, you remember 2 days before government, well, not exactly banned flying, but banned passengers coming. The president was on the newspaper saying how we'll never abandon our friends in West Africa, Ebola will be defeated, and all of this. 2 days later, less than 2 days later, they have switched. Question is why? What is influencing these decisions? You know, why are they being made? And we need to be questioning them and understanding whether they are predicated, or I mean, whether the government's initial stand was predicated on the science they had. Did the science change? You know, what changed? And if we don't understand that, then we don't understand why the government makes its decisions or how its decision-making mechanism works, and then we are unable to hold them to account. So it's always good, I think, to follow back and ask them, you know, why this decision now? What's changed? You know, what's the risks we have? What if people come in?
I think we ask questions. I mean, you've seen, for example, like last night we had the principal secretary in Foreign Affairs, and we were asking all these questions. I think that there's just a lot of obfuscation about this whole Ebola thing coming from different places, and all we can do at the moment right now is ask all the different people, and I think it's something we want to keep asking. But we want to keep asking.
I have to say something about yesterday's interview, because I did get into a back and forth debate with Linda Ogutu on this, because what she was being told by Kibicho, when he was saying, well, actually, flights can come in, people will be screened, Kenyans will be put in quarantine, we just won't allow in the foreigners. That's what he said. But you just ran a clip, and it's just run again now, of James Macharia talking to the parliamentary committee and saying the whole reason why they are banning passengers is so that it's not just the flights from KQ, so that no flights come. So how are you explaining this Kenya's coming?
I mean, even Kibicho said it is all flights, but yes, I mean that's...
but if the intention is that no flights come, how do guys get here so that they are quarantined? You know, and this is my question. And I understand the government is not being clear. You know, it's I think trying to hide behind the behind semantics. You know, but the fact is, we need to be clarifying, because even as she was speaking to Kibicho, Macharia was on NTV. Being asked the same questions. What are you going to do about the Kenyans who are left? And he starts by saying, well, actually, it's unfortunate. You know, we know they might not get here, but our first priority is the Kenyans here. But they've got a duty to those guys, you know, who are stuck in these countries. You know, and we've got to push them. What are your plans? If you're sitting down and making plans for how to prevent people making it to the country, then you have to be thinking, what is our plan for the Kenyans we have locked out? You know, and it seemed to me from what Macharia was telling NTV, there is no plan. Well, we know it's going to be difficult, but we'll think about it later.
Well, it's the reason we asked this guy. But I said they're not evacuating people from those countries, because at the moment, I think that what they're focusing more on is ensuring that the people who come here that it does not come to the country. Because, I mean, again, you know very well that at times these guys don't even know how many Kenyans might be in Liberia because some of these people will just walk to the neighboring country and go and never report to the High Commission embassy there. And so I think that the questions...
he did give a figure. He said, what, less than 200 in all 3 countries. That's what he said, which
who can believe that? Who can believe that? I don't think there's any place, unless it is the North Pole where there are only 200 Kenyans. I think I've met so many Kenyans in every corner of this world. But I think, I mean, this question of Ebola is a confusing thing, wherever it is, even in the US. I mean, I was telling you the other day how even in that country they were saying, why are you bringing those people here? I mean, so people lose their heads when it comes to this question of diseases and that sort of thing. And I think for us as a media, we'll just keep asking the questions. But if you cannot run away from the immovable reality that at the moment, the media in Kenya generally might not be very well equipped for certain specialized subjects. So there are questions we can ask, but only to the extent that you understand the technical details about it. And that's something that personally I think we need to pay greater attention to, because it helps when you see out there, like I noticed in the US, for example, every TV station has a reporter who's actually a medical doctor, you know. So when something like this happens, someone will not confuse you with terminologies that you can actually ask, even based on those terminologies, because you understand.
You understand. Yeah, it's good you bring that up, because that's where I was actually going, whether we actually need to go that way in terms of just specialization for journalists, that you have a person who will, you know, be very competently covering these subjects. And even from Parliament, I think we have a very political people, political journalists who always break down issues and will help bring that understanding of this is what, like now the headline we have today, playing it out in terms of their rivalry way back in 2002, coming down now. Do you see that as something that would work for us here?
Well, I think the more expertise you can bring into the press, the better. But in the specific case of Ebola and infectious disease, it is obviously a plus to have somebody who understands how these diseases work, you know. But that is part of the story, you know. The technical bit, how the disease is passed on and is part of the story. When it comes to actually holding your politicians and your governments to account, a lot of this is information that is available in as much as how decisions, for example, are made. The government goes and asks for 671 million, I think, or that they were being given yesterday. You know, why that figure? What is it actually for? Now, you don't need to be an expert in infectious disease to ask that question. You see, this is my thing, is yes, it would be nice to have doctors, more of them within the press reporting on this, but there are many more questions that we can ask that do not require us to have medical expertise.
I mean, what I mean to say, obviously, I mean, it's easy to pontificate about this, honestly, because at the end of the day, look at right now, if you were to meet any Kenyan and ask them about Ebola, what is the first thing that they want to know about it? What sort of questions do they really want to have answered? Because I mean, I had an argument with somebody about this the other day, and you know, we've been having our own conversations in the media about what is important right now and what is not. You know, there's a lot of politics and there's famine and all of these things. And I was telling someone, I mean, if you are supposed to go and vote and maybe your child is sick, even if this is like your candidate, you know, you will not go there. Exactly. So for me, I mean, it is fine that we can't ask 1,000 questions in one day, but I think that right now what many people would like to know is, am I safe where I am? I mean, I have experienced this many times when, for example, we cover stories of terrorism, and you raise issues like extrajudicial killings, and somebody said, oh, how can you do that, and we are being killed. So it is a good question, but then there's also when to ask that. Imagine if you were to raise an issue like that, for example, on a day when there is a huge blast and, 500
But it depends on what the linkages are.
So I think that there is... you're expecting us to ask 1,000 questions on the first day. Then the following day, what are we going to ask? I think there is a there's a natural progression about this.
As we've said, Ebola has been around for a while.
Where has it?
Well, it is a new outbreak.
Look, this current outbreak.
It's been around for 30 years. That is your point.
True. But even this current outbreak,
there's so many outbreaks around the world that we don't bother with because they don't concern us at this stage.
The discussion. Think about the discussion as to whether KQ should suspend flights. At the very least, 2 or 3 weeks, we've been talking about that, which means for 2 or 3 weeks, we've been thinking about the idea that Ebola might actually make its way here. The report that is quoted by the Standard was released in May. In August.
But 670 million was there before yesterday.
In May, when the outbreak was already happening, a report comes out by Basharia that says 75% of our clinics are not prepared to handle this. Why is that not the discussion?
But who's prepared to handle it?
Why is it takes till August for us to discover let's discuss this?
Who is really prepared to handle Ebola? Let's face it. That is really a theoretical question.
No.
So what I'm saying is this, that if you were to meet, God forbid, you found someone today who's been infected with Ebola and then you start telling them about 670 million. I don't think you'll have a very
So for you, it's priorities. Right now,
we have priorities.
There needs to be focus on...
What's the priority right now?
Is to make
tell people how it's spread?
No, to find out whether we actually safe. And what those guys are doing.
Whether the measures have been put in place to ensure that in the event... Money is one of those measures to facilitate.
Should whether clinics are working be one of our big deals?
No,
should whether our doctors are equipped?
So you
if
our clinics are
report, it's
our clinics. Listen, our clinics are not even prepared for malaria.
No, but you said that you're talking about an entrenched problem in the health sector.
Our clinics are not even prepared for a cold.
So what you're saying is
we suddenly there's a
discussing.
We are discussing.
If we're discussing it in August,
this is a discussion.
A report that was released in May. That's what I'm asking.
We're discussing
You're suggesting that there were other questions that were being asked, and now we've come to the question of the clinics and stuff. I'm saying they were actually not being asked.
So you want to tell
what would be the story you'd have done and now? What would be that number one story?
Is from the beginning.
Yes.
From when we actually perceive that there is an actual threat. And don't forget, we're not saying it's one reporter doing this. And you've got a whole range of people. Some guy can be going to look at, okay, how is this thing actually spread? Will it get guys when they're on the plane? If somebody lands here, what do? Somebody else goes out and finds out this. What is our preparedness? Somebody else goes out and does it. These things you can actually even do them concurrently. My point is, it seems that it takes for our press, it takes its cue from what government is saying and what government says is important now. Instead of us being the guys who are setting that agenda, the guys who are saying, actually, we need to be discussing this report here, so that we are not talking of giving government cash yesterday to start equipping hospitals or medical workers or whatever, but that over a period of time we have been looking at the possibility of Ebola coming and saying, all right, what are we actually doing?
No, my point, Gadara, is that we have this thing. I mean, it's been around for all this, and we're asking different questions at different times. But your method seems to be that we ask all the questions in this
all
paper
all
at a go from page 1 to page 40, and then
it's
tomorrow
all Ebola from
look
this is how
each
it's
other.
this one, this,
honestly, So I think that you have to live in a real world. I mean, it is very easy, like I said, to moralize about the coverage of this thing. But we live in a real world, and there are other things also happening here. If you picked up a newspaper where it's all about Ebola, I'm sure you would find the next one. So I mean, that is.
Well, I don't think it has to be all about Ebola.
That is what you're talking about here.
No. I don't think I'm saying that you get a paper.
You have right now just distributed all our reporters to the field to cover Ebola.
So you guys are sitting here, what, 5 reporters? You've got bloody many reporters.
Come on, and there are many issues in this country.
True. But we
that we will also say we are not covering.
Well, actually, there are very many issues we don't cover. But I will say that I think that we as a press, we are very, reticent to take up the role of actually describing and setting the agenda for the country and saying, this is important, look at it, look at it in a sort of holistic fashion. And I think we tend to report only which the government wants us to report, or at least what it enables us to report. And there's very little questioning of what the content of what we are being told is. So when they stand up and they say, we've got a plan, there are a few questions of what is actually that plan. Give it to us, let's interrogate it. And it goes to a point when we are now squeezed to a corner and we say, well, actually people are now too scared of things, so let's not discuss that. If over a period of time we are consistently questioning this, I think we would find ourselves much better prepared when the next outbreak, hopefully, it won't happen in a while, but whenever it happens, we're much better prepared than I think we are now.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll talk about issues around the journalist and as far as training. I was with the Media Council CEO yesterday for an interview. They're vetting the institutions.
Did you ask him to look for Gadara?
No, what was interesting is that towards the end of the interview, I asked him his ranking of the media. One, in terms of freedoms, he gave it an 8, the Kenyan media compared to others. On professionalism and technology, he gave us a 5. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that. Don't go away, we're back in a moment.